Sunday in Italy here at the Misano World Circuit, and race 2 of the weekend coming up in a few moments' time for McLaren Trophy Europe. The cars released round to the grid. Yesterday's race was an interesting one. It was won by Kevin Magnussen and Joe Wheeler. It had a late race safety car period, and today's race will be from a separate grid. The cars qualified this morning, and as we get set to go racing, it's going to be 50 minutes with the mandatory pit stops and with a Pro-Am driver lineup. The pros will start, but the qualifying time of the AM is how the grid has been set. David Addison and Tommy Erdos trackside, looking forward to what promises to be another interesting race. Only the second year of the McLaren Trophy Europe, and therefore, inevitably, grids are still building. Lots of new faces coming into it this year, and there are more cars, more drivers, more teams having a good look at this for the future round, Spa being the next stop. So let's first of all do the homework and get the admin out of the way, if you like, Tommy, because we've got Arturas and we've got a 570, and then we subdivide that into AMs and Pro-Ams. Let's start there.
Yeah, so obviously race 2 here in Misano. We had a good first race of the season yesterday, and same guys on the grid. Slightly changed grid positions there, but not for the number 4. So Kevin Magnussen again put the car on pole, but we have young Jaden Kelly on the front row there. That will be an exciting race to watch. But yes, so 2 classes, obviously Artura and the 570S. Yeah, we're set for a good race again, we hope.
Now, the car of Jaden Kelly, let's just touch on that, starting, as it will, second on the grid. It's the car that's run by Speedworks Motorsport, which was going really well yesterday. We were expecting Jaden to be up there fighting Danny Henry to gain a place, and then there was what looked like a suspension breakage or something like that.
Yes, apparently there was an upright issue with that. Whether that was caused by striking over the curbs or not, we still don't know. But yes, so unfortunately they had that issue with them. But everything's fixed now and they're ready to go.
So Jaden Kelly in only his second ever car race on the front row of the grid, and he will certainly be a driver to watch. Let us go to the grid, though, first of all, and hear from yesterday's winner and the man that qualified the car on pole position today. Kevin Magnussen is with Antonio Rankin.
Kevin, another pole. Will it be another race win?
Yes, that's the plan. Man, Optimum Motorsport have done such a good job with this car, putting it together for us in short order, and it's just so fast. So I was able to put that lap together. It's a lot closer today. You guys probably saw Jaden, that youngster, 17 years old, coming out of nowhere, only a couple tenths off me, this old guy. So it's going to be a little tighter, I think, today, and people are learning the circuit, and McLaren has done such a great job with the trophy car, the Artura Trophy, that you can learn this car very quickly, and that's what we're seeing. Everyone's getting a lot quicker, and there's probably a lot of folks watching at home. I think some of my American friends watching that want to come over here and race, and so that's the good news, is that everybody can learn the car, get up to speed very quick, but that's going to mean it's going to be a little bit more challenging, a little bit more exciting for us today. But I'll tell you what, Joe, he can wheel. The wheeler can wheel, and he's doing a great job.
I mean, you just said you're getting really comfortable with the car, but you think it might be a bit closer today? You pulled some massive gaps in race 1.
Yeah, I think that part of my strengths is adaptability. I've driven a bunch of different stuff, and sometimes for teams that aren't as good as Optimum, and so I think that's helped me. But today, we really have this opportunity with Joe in the car first. I was fortunate to get him up front. I think he's going to try to check out if he can, but let's see. Jaden was looking pretty good.
Well, it would be phenomenal if you could do it. So best of luck.
We're gonna try it. 2 poles, 2 wins. That's the goal. So let's see if we can do it for McLaren and Optimum. So thanks for everyone that's watching back home.
Thank you.
And the American influence for McLaren is such that there's going to be an American equivalent of this European Series next year. And McLaren has a strong following stateside, doesn't it?
Very much so. Really exciting news about the series going to America. It's now been announced, starting in 2025. Yeah, it's a great following for the brand, the McLaren brand in America. So I'm sure that's going to really catch on and get lots of people joining in.
Now there's Jaden Kelly's car, the newcomer to car racing. Second ever race. He shares the Speedworks entry with Fiona James. He was really impressive yesterday, and it's quite amusing because 1 or 2 drivers apparently are saying, oh, really, should he be categorised as he is? Well, the guy had never raced a car until yesterday, so nobody really had an idea of how good he was going to be, even though he's been good in karting.
Absolutely. I mean, you're always going to get that. You know, people come in and they immediately quit. Jaden has done a fantastic job. In fact, he actually should have been on pole for this qualifying. If you watch qualifying, he had the first and third sector purple, and he didn't nail the second sector, and that's why Kevin got the pole. But he's very, very strong. I think he'll feature very strongly against Kevin in this race.
In this race, yeah. Let's go back to the grid, because Fiona James is the second driver for number 17, the other front row car. Fiona James is with Antonia.
Look at me. So it's not all been in order this weekend for you, unfortunately, but today, race 2, you're starting in P2. How are you feeling?
Yeah, it's great, because I think yesterday was a bit of a, well, not the greatest day ever with brakes seizing and things, so we didn't get a flying lap in quali. So starting from the back of the grid, whilst fun, fighting your way through the pack is not ideal. So no, it'd be really good to see what we can do, because I think we deserved a podium yesterday, really, and then obviously we didn't finish as well. We're 5 laps down because the brake problem again. So yeah, it's great to be back at the front now.
So you said the problem came back. Do you think there's a chance it could reoccur today?
We just don't know. The guys have changed everything possible again last night. So yeah, we're just fingers crossed.
Yeah, we'll all keep our fingers crossed for you. Best of luck. Thank you.
Fiona James with the Valero racewear. That's her business. The race clothing with quite a number of drivers, part of the Valero family, and the car operated by Speedworks Motorsport, team you might be familiar with if you follow the British Touring Car Championship. Jeff Kingston, the engineer, overseeing all of that. Danny Buxton, the director of motorsport for the team, ex-McLaren employee himself, making sure that there's a McLaren link still by bringing the team into the McLaren Trophy. Tommy Pintos won last year's championship when he shared with Gonzalo de Andres. They split apart this year at SMC Motorsport, but the two Gulf liveried cars were a real factor yesterday.
Yes, I mean, all the SMC cars really did perform incredibly well. I mean, great to see SMC back in the series. They were obviously the champions last year with the drivers, and yeah, their commitment to the series is really fantastic. Tommy, you know, is only 18 years old, very young guy. I thought he was about 20 something, but yesterday talking to him, he said, no, I'm only 18, and incredible. I mean, he's got such a mature head over his shoulder, and you know, the way he drives is like a pro, really. So he is obviously the pro element of the lineup again, and yeah, a solid podium yesterday with Adalberto.
I mean, we talk about young drivers. This is aimed primarily at the AMs to give them a great car to go racing in. The pro driver is there really to help them, to guide them, to coach them. Yes, they can make an impact in the racing, but the regulations are quite cleverly written. So for this race, for example, yes, the pro driver starts, but they have a limited amount of the race that they can do. So the lion's share is still on the shoulders of the AM, isn't it?
Yes, true to the format of the series. You know, always the AMs will get the bulk of the time in the car. So today the pros start the race, and the window for them to pit is between 10 and 20 minutes. And of course they're probably going to extend it to 20 to maximize the performance. But that means that again the AMs will do 30 minutes of the race. So they always get the bulk of it, which is great.
Absolutely, and the more mileage, the better they get. We've got one driver. Bearing in mind it's the pros in the car, Bradley Ellis is under investigation for a practice start at turn 14. So that's being looked at by race control, but the grid is, as you can see, formed. Joe Wheeler on pole position then, having won yesterday's race with Kevin Madsen. Jaden Kelly with Fiona James retired yesterday. As Fiona was saying, they had that brake issue in the practice and qualifying sessions, and then the wishbone-related suspension dramas in the race. Alejandro Gapet lining up third on the grid, runner-up yesterday. Tommy Pintos starts fourth, he was third yesterday. Danny Henry starts fifth, he was fourth in the race yesterday. And Charles Voltzmann will start number 42 from sixth on the grid, and that was a car that was in trouble yesterday. We didn't really see Charles get behind the wheel of it, but he, very, very experienced driver, having raced in IndyCar for a time, ought to be one to watch, I would have thought. Yeah,
absolutely. Again, they didn't have a very good run at all, so hopefully they will get a much cleaner run this time around. They really deserve that. I really hope, again, the number 17 Speedworks car is holding on well for this race, because they have a real chance of the podium here. I mean, this is an MM entry, so they'll have less time in the pits. The guy in front of them, they have 7 seconds added to the pit stop because of the wind yesterday. So, and obviously Jaden's pace is absolutely stunning, and Fiona did a great job yesterday as well. So, you know, that Speedworks car should really feature on the podium for this race, hopefully.
Agree with that, yes. And those extra time in the pits based on finishing in the top 3 in the previous race. So it prevents the same driver combination from dominating the season. Just a little bit more time spent in the pits. And there are different times for the pit stops depending on whether you are a 570S or an Artura Am or an Artura Pro Am that we'll worry about when we get to the pit window. It's going to be a standing start. So although some GT-style categories do rolling, McLaren go with a standing start with pole position on the 1x1 grid being on the outside line. And that's where Joe Wheeler will be at the end of this lap, ready for the start of the race. They're in the orange-nosed Optimum car. Jaden Kelly there will be second on the grid. And then the Gulf cars, third and fourth, Alejandro Gapet and Tommy Pintos. The AMs then get themselves ready, and they can make the difference. The pros, we touched on this a little bit yesterday, their pace is their pace. They're all very quick, and although there are bragging rights at stake, the race result will hinge largely on the AMs. Kevin Madsen is a kind of AM, but bearing in mind he's won the Ligier European Series, he's a stunt driver, he's done lots of manufacturer test driving and YouTube track guides, and Lamborghini Super Trofeo racing, and is a spotter in IMSA for Optimum. He's a kind of AM plus, isn't he, really? He's not an inexperienced newcomer.
You have to say he's hugely experienced, isn't he? And I mean, just listening to you giving his CV there, he's a very capable driver, and he proved that yesterday. Sure. He did a fantastic job yesterday throughout the race. Didn't put a foot wrong, and deservedly won the race. But it's different this time. They have a penalty in the pits. They have a very young charger in Jaden Kelly, a very solid driver in Fiona as well. And but there are other people. The SMC cars are there as well to pick up the pieces. So it'll be a very interesting race too.
Sure. What reaction, if any, yesterday were you getting from drivers about how they were feeling post-race? I don't mean in terms of had they enjoyed it, but more about the heat and the temperatures, because yesterday they raced later in the day. Today is a cooler and more overcast day anyway. Yeah, but, I mean, you know, it takes it out of you.
Yeah, well, it does, and I think some of them were, I suppose, wetter than others, sweating and feeling it a little bit more. But I mean, generally speaking, they were okay. They seemed well, and it's always a concern first race of the season as well, because not everyone is as race fit as perhaps they would like to be. But there were no real concerns that we have in terms of their ability to operate the car. Obviously today, and as you say, today is a bit cooler, so it should be a little bit easier as well.
Danny Henry, just to make the point about him, is the one Iron Man of McLaren Trophy Europe racing, because he goes solo. It doesn't really matter, therefore, when he pits, as long as it's within the window, because the pace of the car will be the pace of the car. But he wants as much track time as he can get. Good on him.
Absolutely, and he gets it. He does all the sessions, obviously all the practice sessions and the qualifyings and everything else. And he's done a great job yesterday, and had a great battle against Adalberto in the SMC car. And so yeah, he's looking forward to the race starting soon.
Indeed so. The one at the back is the 570 that Ollie Webb will start. The very experienced single-seater and sports car racer, number 22, Ollie Webb. So he's on a kind of grid of his own to split the Arturas away from the 570. The 5-second board is shown. So it's Joe Wheeler on pole position on the outside line nearest the pit wall. Lights out, blast off, and a good getaway then by Wheeler, but a good start too by Jaden Kelly. And on his toes, Alejandro Gapet, who moves across to defend from teammate Tommy Pintos as they go down towards turn one. Kelly has a look on the inside and the outside, and he is absolutely determined to strike early, while on cold tyres, the car of Joe Wheeler tries to get up to pace then as they run now out of turn 3 up towards the hairpin at 4. The top two edging ever so slightly clear, with Charles Voltzman up into 5th place by the look of it as they go hard on the brakes round the hairpin. The drone chases and runs a little bit wide up to 5th place, the drone now, as they go using the curb look out of turn 6, speed building onto the back straight, and the top two nose to tail, but a good start by Joe Wheeler from pole.
Great start from Joe Wheeler, and great pictures there from the drone. Fantastic battle now into turn 7.
That's brave,
8.
isn't it? Through on the inside line goes Jaden Kelly in only his 2nd ever car race. And now that he's hit the front, let's see what he can do to get away. Really brave stuff, that. You saw how brave he was on the cold tyres at turns 1, 2 and 3, the first S. But by the end of the lap, he's ahead, and then he has a bit of a wobble going out of turn 10. The car twitches. That brings Joe Wheeler right back alongside him. So Joe Wheeler on the inside line with the orange-fronted car. The Valero one on the outside line is that in the hands of Jaden Kelly as they dive through turn 11. Kelly stays ahead, and Alejandro Gapet coming into the equation as well. Look round the outside line. Very brave. And that's Tommy Pintos, in fact, in the SMC car up into 2nd place from 4th on the grid. So Pintos Very brave on the outside. That was Gapet getting a bit of hip and shoulder with Joe Wheeler on the inside line to go third. And Pintos is on a mission because we might end up with 3 different leaders within a lap and a bit here. He's right on the tail of Kelly coming up to the end of the lap, but that was brave around the outside, wasn't it?
Fantastic opening action there, and Pintos very determined, and he's really chasing Jaden very, very heavily there into turn 1.
Brakes as late as he can, but Jaden Kelly now, you can just see the car a little bit nervy as it goes out of turn 1. Remember, this is his 2nd ever car race from karting into these cars, and these are faster, more powerful than a GT4 spec McLaren, so they're not easy to learn about. They are, you know, they reward the driver, but they're demanding of the driver, and Kelly now trying to get himself into a rhythm. And for a moment or two, just ignore the pressure from behind, get himself sorted, get himself into a rhythm, get himself comfortable, and then he can push, and he is doing so. Look, coming out of turn 6, the kink at 7 takes you to that left at 8, and he's just pulled away by about a 1/10 of a second, although really good on the brakes is Pintos, who has a massive send up the inside and goes through. Wow!
That was an amazing, very opportunistic move there, and he pulled it off. Incredible stuff from Pintos, and I tell you, I love that drone footage. It's absolutely amazing. Really gives you the impression of the speed of these cars. So fantastic stuff.
And a fantastic move, as you say, pulled by Tommy Pintos. So Jaden Kelly, okay, he's proved he's got pace. Now there'll be a few lessons learned about defending positions, possibly, because a more experienced driver there absolutely came charging by. But Kelly is not taking it lying down, is he? He's staying with him, and he's got good pace, so he can sit on the tail of Pintos and now start to apply the pressure on the new race leader.
Absolutely, Jaden is very, very aggressive there. Still, has he got the inside of there? Oh.
He has. He's got a look. He's not quite level, but yeah, he's not losing that lead lying down. He wants it back pronto.
He had to get back on the brake pedal there, but otherwise there was going to be contact. But
Yeah.
2 young lads, yeah, you say more experienced Thomas Pinto, but it's only 1 year more experience than him. He's 18. So there's a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old fighting for the lead there. Absolutely amazing stuff.
It sounds like we're in an old folks home here, you and I, talking about these teenagers in GT cars. But yes, you're right. 18 versus 17. Tommy Pintos ahead of Jaden Kelly. Pintos having done the fastest lap of the race thus far. Battle is on here. 42 is Charles Voltzmann, and behind him is Aston Miller. In number 20, the car that he shares with Paul Rogers, there is Charles Voltzmann, whose father, of course, was a prolific sports car racer, and Charles Jr. following suit through sports car racing and single-seaters in America. So that's the lead battle. It is Tommy Pintos ahead, but another absolute best first sector time posted by Jaden Kelly. And in a way, maybe it's easier for him now. He's got a car ahead that he can chase, that he can measure his pace, and he's braking against.
Yeah, I think it's nice to see that, you know, a couple of laps have gone now. He's kind of settling down a little bit. Things are looking a little bit hot at the beginning of the race, but good to see them racing hard, close, but no contact.
So Pintos from Kelly from Gapet, Wheeler down to 4th from pole. Interestingly, Voltzmann is 5th, Miller is 6th, Bradley Ellis 7th, Duncan Tappy is 8th, and Danny Henry down in 9th place, Ollie Webb 10th. But with respect, we're anticipating him to be there because the 570 not as quick as the Arturas. So Pintos the race leader. This is lap 3. It is a 50-minute race, not a set number of laps. And look, Pintos having to go really defensive now because Jaden Kelly is getting more and more confident. He was behind the wheel when that car broke in the race yesterday, which was a bit of a scare. But right now, he is yet again on the inside line coming out of turn 15. Couldn't quite stay alongside, but he does at 16 with a big, big throw up the inside line. What a move. Brilliant stuff. Jaden Kelly back in the lead.
Well, I don't care how many cars we got on the grid. This is fantastic battle. Great racing from McLaren Trophy here at Misano, and these 2 young Chargers are really showing the way around at the moment. But you can see that the top 6 cars are very close together. So it could be anybody's race now. And now we need to look at the, well, when it comes to the pit stops, some of these cars have obviously time added to their pit stops. So that's going to be interesting.
So race order, Jaden Kelly now in the largely white car from Speedworks leads the way. The 2 SMC cars are behind. Number 7, Tommy Pintos, and then 11, Alejandro Gapet. In 4th place, it is Joe Wheeler in the car there, look, with the orange front that started on pole position. In 5th place, the white car is Charles Voltzmann, the red, white and blue car, Charles Voltzmann. And on his tail, 6th, Aston Miller. Bit of a gap back. Look for the orange colours of Bradley Ellis in 7th place. Behind him is Duncan Tappy. And side by side again for the race lead up towards turn 9. But Jaden Kelly stands his ground on the inside. Tommy Pintos is shown the outside line. Alejandro Gapet goes to the inside. The 2 Spanish SMC cars are almost overlapping coming off the corner. That's what Jaden Kelly needs, really, isn't it? A squabble behind that will delay them and let him break away a bit.
Yes, but at the moment there's not much of a gap between those guys, and I think the one that's feeling sore probably now is Joe Wheeler in 4th place. Obviously he's very aware that he has that 7-second success penalty to be added at the pit stop, so he needs to be certainly limits, and that's beginning to...
Now 2 warnings, plenty of other drops, everybody. I think now. Up into 3rd place, he's now gone through from Zvoltsman, who's bringing Aston Miller with him, looking the white, and to the inside line goes Charles Zvoltsman. He gets crowded up onto the curb. Miller goes to the outside line, but he can't find a way through there. So, the pros at play, and it's a fascinating situation, isn't it, amongst the pros. Charles Zvoltsman, who, dare one say, is one of the old stagers, against Aston Miller, who is relatively recently into motor racing, approached from Ginetta Juniors into British GT, but, you know, he's only been racing for, what, 3-4 seasons?
They're doing incredibly well.
Yeah.
Very close to the pace there. Everybody together. This, you know, it's phenomenal racing again from these guys, and let's hope they leave some tyres left for the M's when they get in the car. But great to see. Very close battle, but so far no contact. Maybe a little bit of a touch there, I just saw, but nothing major.
And Tommy has to look at this as the driving standards advisor as well. So much as he wants to watch a good, close, exciting race, you don't want to spend all evening having to interview drivers, do you?
Well, it's okay. My flight's tomorrow, not tonight.
Oh, that's fine. Okay, right. They can do what they want. There's Jaden Kelly, then the race leader, and 0.3 of a second was the margin at the end of the previous lap from Tommy Pintos. And then in 3rd place, Alejandro Gapet, with Joe Wheeler having wriggled his way past on this lap. Therefore, Gapet down in 4th. 5th is Zvoltsman, 6th is Miller. Bradley Ellis in 7th place. Wasn't lapping as quickly last time, but I just thought maybe it was a fraction closer as he came down towards turn 16. The leaders go through, and Kelly is now 7/10 ahead. He's just done the fastest lap of the race. Bit of damage on the side of the Aston Miller Paul Rogers car there. So in the slightly cooler temperatures today, track temperature 27.2 degrees. The ambient is just under 21, and the car's turning their way through turn 4 with about a minute and change on the clock before the pit window opens. Now, as Tommy Erdos made the point earlier on, the pro drivers, the quicker drivers, will go as long as they can. The only one that's going to perhaps buck that trend is soloist Danny Henry. He's got to serve a pit stop, and he's got to do it in the window. But when in the window is entirely down to him, especially given that he's already down in 9th place. So, in a way, get it out of the way, then you're good to the end, and you can pick off some of the other AMs. That car will run at the same pace race long. That's Charles Zvoltsman then in 5th, and he's getting himself onto the back of Alejandro Gapet, who, having lost 3rd, has fallen back a bit now from Joe Wheeler.
Yeah, another 30 or so seconds, the pit window will open, but like I said, we'll probably see them stay for another 10 minutes in the car, get the full 20 minutes out of the way, and you'll see some pit stop changes. Jaden Kelly is obviously he's keen to try and build a gap to the guy behind, but he really is using quite a lot of track, so he really needs to watch for that, otherwise you will start getting a penalty.
Yeah, he's had 3 track limit offences, and that is being tallied up. He's not the only one on 3, in fairness. So also Duncan Tappy, Bradley Ellis as well, and 4 track limit warnings to Tommy Pintos behind him. So the top 2 are heading towards, well, 6 is the penalty point, isn't it? Leaders go by, and Jaden Kelly is 0.7 of a second up on Tommy Pintos. Pit window is open, but very few other than Danny Henry would consider it right now. There is the battle going on for 4th and 5th. Gapet ahead of Charles Zvoltsman, the 2005 Toyota Atlantic champion, and Zvoltsman thinks about a move on the inside and then thinks better of it. The last thing he needs to do is damage the car of the bill-paying AM and bring it back in a mess. So he sits tight for the moment, knowing he's got good pace and he can challenge Gapet maybe at the end of this straight, where we've seen some brave moves in the past. We're on lap 7 with 39 minutes to go. Pit window open, as I say. Zvoltsman has a look. Didn't really commit to that, but if nothing else, he can unsettle Gapet, can't he, in the Gulf liveried car, showing intent.
That's it, show himself in the mirrors and unnerve him if you can. Again, very, very close battles there. And what I like about this is obviously the pros, they have the responsibility of bringing the car back to their AMs who, you know, let's face it, it's about them.
Yeah.
So that element of respect, if you will, you know, brings really close racing, but good sportsmanship as well. So that's one of the really nice things about the McLaren racing here in Misano, and it was obviously evident last year as well. So good hard battle between these pro guys, but with an element of respect, knowing that they need to bring the car back in the pits in one piece.
Bradley Ellis, you just saw in the pit lane, giving way to Klaus Halsig. So an early stop, given that Bradley is very quick, British GT champion, but putting Klaus Halsig in for the maximum time, perhaps giving him a lap or two to get comfortable before he has to take on the other AM. So when these cars have an AM in, he'll already be up to speed, and maybe that's an advantage. Great battle pack going over the line there. Look for now 4th, 5th, 6th, Geppert, Voltzmann and Aston Miller. Alejandro Geppert, who's only really been in car racing since 2022. He's raced in touring cars, he's raced in GT cars. He also is behind the Kilometres Without Trail initiative, where he plants trees to offset the CO2 used for him globetrotting going racing, which is a nice touch. Right now, he is seeing his teammate getting away up the road. Tommy Pintos getting a little bit nearer to Jaden Kelly. Joe Wheeler, though, is slightly in no man's land because he's not catching the top two and he's not being caught by that battle behind, where again, looks Voltzmann is on the attack. A very late braking by Geppert into turn 8. And that brings Voltzmann and Miller a little bit nearer, heading up towards turn 9. There are the two leaders. That's Wheeler, and there's your 4th place fight. The 3 of them together.
Joe really needs to start pushing the pace a little bit. So obviously he's falling back a little bit. And again, remember, he has 7 seconds to add to his pit stop. So these guys, they need to push him on the radio. And but we'll never know. Maybe he has a slight issue, or but certainly right now he's lacking a little bit of pace against the top 2 guys.
Although Kevin Madsen's pace yesterday in the AM stint was very, very impressive. So given how quick Kevin is, they might overcome it. The inside line there, Aston Miller gets into Charles Voltzmann and turns him around. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. We cross live to our driving standards advisor for his view. What do you think?
Well, I reserved the view for later on in the stewards' room, but it did look a little bit ambitious there on the inside. There was a bit of a touch. Yeah, definitely be investigated, that one.
Yeah, indeed. Right, well, he didn't want an easy night of it. So, yeah, contact. Aston Miller making that move, but it's a tight corner, that. And, of course, drivers trying to find half a gap, make the advantage. Charles Voltzmann turned in, around he went. The car continued, as you saw. Let's have another look. Talk us through it, Tommy.
So, yeah, you saw an opportunity there, but I'd say a little bit late, frankly. Yeah, just a late move on the inside, looks from this angle. But, you know, I've done this now a few years on the driving standards, and you always look at every angle just to make sure that you cover every possibility. But at the moment, it looks like it was a bit of a late lunge.
Going off topic slightly, but do you look at it differently if it's pro on pro rather than AM against AM, or is an incident an incident?
An incident is an incident. You have to be detached from that. And I think, obviously, you know, if, for example, yeah, with the pros, you have to just say to them, well, listen, you guys, you know, you should know better, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, you know, I do it from a driver's point of view. You know, I competed all my life, and I know exactly what they're going through. So, you know, you have to be open to all possibilities and you know, investigate everything carefully.
Well, right now, Jaden Kelly looking very, very impressive. Fiona James will take over a car that potentially will be brought to her in the lead. Except Kelly gets it all wrong, coming out of turn 13, and around it goes. Throws away the race lead. He's able to quickly respond and get back into contention, but he's down now into 4th place. So, scrap that. Jaden Kelly will not bring Fiona James a car in the lead of the race. Instead, she's going to have to battle up from 4th, and that gives Tommy Pintos the advantage. Poor old Jaden Kelly. It had all looked so good, and then just out of nowhere, lost it. Good recovery.
Very good recovery. He turned around quickly and got back in. We're going to have a replay on that now. It just looks like it was just a little, you know, just another 2 or 3 kilometers per hour too quickly for the tires at that point, and lost the back end. He is 17, he is learning, and maybe he just slightly overcooked that one.
Yeah, not the first person to spin, and won't be the last, will he? But the pace has been good, and another lesson learned there. But interesting that it just got away from him, because you'd think now the tyres will be warmer. Whether that's the sign of an issue starting to creep in, well, time will tell. But let's hopefully just put it down to a little bit too much right foot and getting the car unbalanced. But certainly Jaden Kelly was able to respond and quickly get back on track. And he didn't lose that much time to Geppert in 3rd place. He's almost on his tail. But we have Tommy Pintos now ahead of Joe Wheeler. Some of that time lost, of course, which was about 3 seconds only by Jaden Kelly, will be won back in the pits because they don't have any extra time to serve anyway.
That's it, that's right. I have to say I'm hugely impressed by Tommy Pintos. He, again, an 18-year-old current champion. He won, obviously, the championship last year with Gonzalo, but he drives like he's 35 years old. He's just such a mature driver for his age, and you know, kept his cool there under a lot of pressure. Now he's leading the race.
Came out of karting, didn't he, Tommy Pintos, initially, to go into GT4 spec cars. Danny Henry is serving his pit stop. So at the 33 minutes to go mark, he comes in and can sort of catch his breath. There is the 570 in the hands of Ollie Webb. Less powerful car, which is why it's doing slower lap times, but Ollie Webb sharing this with the American Ryan James. And again, within that crash helmet, vast amounts of experience. Ollie Webb has driven all sorts of things over the years.
Huge experience by Ollie Webb, just a thoroughly nice guy as well. He took me around the track yesterday and gave me a bit of an insight into Misano, because I've never been here before. And we brushed about the subject of wet weather, because there was some wet weather maybe forecasted for today. Unfortunately for Ollie Webb, there is no wet weather, because he could have been on a good one with a one-wheel nut 570S. You know, that would have been potentially something good for them. But he's still out there fighting, and he's just come in the pits.
He is indeed, to give way then to Ryan James. Interesting how many drivers have been saying on this grid alone that they've not been to Misano before. It's not a circuit that many of them have ever tackled. And Tommy Pintos right now, race leader by 11 tenths from Joe Wheeler, who will be new to the circuit as well. There is the charging Jaden Kelly. So maybe Jeff Kingston will be on the radio saying, all right, calm it down, don't do that again, just bring it to the end of the stint, keep in touch with that leading group. But yeah, all part of learning. And he's not, in fairness, the only driver that we've seen have a spin this weekend.
No, that's right. So they've all... we had a few this past few days, but talking about Jeff Kingston, he seems to find quick guys, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He worked last year with Michael O'Brien, who I was hugely impressed by the way. And I haven't seen him, obviously he's not out with us at the moment, but I hope he's got something going, because he's such a talented driver, Michael O'Brien. And now, of course, young Jaden. So
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Jeff Kingston, GT and touring car engineer. He's raced motorbikes himself. If you start reading his CV, you'll grow a beard by the end of it, because it takes forever. He's done so many different things for different teams. Massively experienced, and his car is back in the lead because Jaden Kelly has stayed out. The other three, as you've just seen, Pintos, Wheeler and Capet, and also Aston Miller and Charles Voltzmann have all come in. So Jaden Kelly is now very definitely on his last lap, because he is going to be, I think, just in the nick of time in the pit lane, but it's going to be by a handful of seconds. If he had another spin on this lap and lost time, he'd be over the limit of the pit window. So he's hopefully the combination of Kelly's right foot, Kingston's engineering prowess and strategy call is going to coincide to perfection to get him in with about 3-4 seconds to spare.
Yes, I mean, Jeff, a hugely experienced guy. He was actually my race engineer at Lister when we raced at Le Mans with the GT1 Newcastle United Lister, so know Jeff very well.
Wow.
And a hugely experienced guy. So, but he will be on the radio saying, get your foot down and bring it back into the pits now, because it is looking tight here. They've got 50 seconds to bring their car back in.
But Jaden Kelly's pace a bit faster than Fiona James, so again exploiting him to the absolute maximum. Number 80 there, Duncan Tappy giving way now to Ron Trenker. So everything goes quiet, because these are designed to be long stops, so that there's no panic. You get the AM in and settled and all is good, rather than, for example, the belt not being done up properly and everything being in a panic and the AM going out in a bit of a flap. It's all done to a prescribed time, and Jaden Kelly will come in, which will therefore give us only 2 or 3 cars on track. Here he is, 14 seconds, 13 seconds. What have we got on the clock when he gets to the timing line? Pit in, he breaks the beam now with 3 seconds to spare. Perfection.
Well, there you go. Take my hat off to Jeff Kingston and the Speedworks team. They're fantastic job there. Just got him in the nick of time.
Yes, if you want to find anybody that will tell you the time, Jeff's the man, because it will clearly be precise to the millisecond. So the bulk of the field making its way down the pit lane, and Jaden Kelly now really has the pit lane to himself, so Speedworks can go to works. And there is 42, which is now Albert Jochems, heading the queue of cars out on track. At the end of the lap on which Fiona James rejoins, we'll have a proper idea of the order and also start looking at gaps. But look, they're already racing. That's number 4, Kevin Madsen, ahead of Paul Rogers, who's got a good track record of Ferrari Challenge, both in Europe and in the UK. Aston Miller, who took the earlier stint, Ginetta Junior champion back in 2021. And so there, Albert Jochems ahead of Kevin Madsen, who, even with that extra time in the pits, yes, he's lost places, but his pace yesterday would suggest he'd be able to get himself back up towards the front of the field.
Yes, and Kevin there, very keen to get through. He was flashing his lights, obviously trying to show him his car in the mirrors, but it seems to have a little bit more pace, obviously, than the car in front. That should happen within the next couple of corners.
So there up the road, you've got the leading SMC motorsport cars with now 7, and Alberto Baptista having relayed to Pintos, and in 11 it is Gonzalo de Andres who has taken over from Alejandro Gapet. Away goes Fiona James. And a 5-second time penalty for number 80. That's the Duncan Tappy Ron Trenker car for track limit infringements, we're being told. Yeah, so number 80, 5-second penalty. And also a 5-second penalty for Fiona James and Jaden Kelly, and a 5-second penalty for Baptista and Pintos. So quite a few of them now, I'm afraid, incurring penalties. Battle on track, Albert Jochems, but round the outside goes Kevin Madsen. So it is going to be Gonzalo de Andres in the lead of the race now. Just need to put the Fiona James car back into the mix at the end of the next lap. And there's the Valero entry coming through behind Paul Rogers up towards turn 4. So Jaden Kelly did the fastest lap of the race early on. And as I say, we've got these 5-second penalties now to be applied. So they go the way of number 80, now with Ron Trenker at the wheel, 17, now Fiona James at the wheel, and 7, which is now Adalberto Baptista. And that's all for incurring track limit warnings. 8 warnings now to Jaden Kelly, 6 to others. So there's number 17, Fiona James at the wheel, trying to play herself in, get a feel of what the car is like, what the track feels like now. And the pit stop time, 2 minutes 9 for that car, which was quite a chunk slower than others, actually.
Yes.
Because we've got, for some, for example, Danny Henry, 1 minute and 42, and Gonzalo de Andres, 2 minutes. So somewhere there, some time was lost in the pits.
Yes, well, Gonzalo obviously had a penalty applied to him. He was second, I believe. Yesterday
yes.
He was second,
yeah.
So that's 5 seconds added to his time in the pits. But yeah, that seems a bit of a slow stop. And of course, all of those lives, if you will, on the track limits lost at the beginning of the race with them fighting, and that's obviously meant that the cars 17 and 7, obviously 80 as well, but 17 and 7 particularly were at the top of the field, now have to add 5 seconds.
So there's Fiona James. That car came in the lead. I mean, okay, it was 4th in the pack after the spin, but it was a notional leader when it came in, but it's 5th now. So it was a long stop for whatever reason. Not the longest, because Adalberto Baptista's pit stop was 2 minutes and 13, but Baptista up the inside there tries to squeeze by. This is the battle going on now for 5th place, and Baptista goes through, and Fiona James just able to fend off Danny Henry, but for how much longer? Because Danny has got good pace, and remember, he knows better than anybody what the track and conditions are like, because he's been out from the very start.
Yes, that's right. So Danny, obviously a solo entry there. He's just made a move on Fiona there, very decisive move there, and that should be him into 6th position.
So 1 place lost for Fiona James, and there is the Valero car turning now up through turn 10. So Gonzalo de Andres leads in number 11, and there he is, and it's Kevin Madsen in 2nd place, who last time was lapping fractionally quicker, but 8 seconds is the starting point of the gap. Then you've got Albert Jochems in 3rd place, having taken over from Charles Voltzmann. He's dropping back. Then you've got Paul Rogers in 4th place, and he's not lapping as quickly as the top 2. And then it's Fiona James, well, now down in 6th, behind Adalberto Baptista. In fact, Baptista is quicker than a good chunk of the field ahead of him, so he might be one to watch. Andres goes through. There's your 2nd place car, Kevin Madsen. 8 seconds last time, 7.7 this time, so it's down, but only by a little.
Yes, and his lap times now are only about 3/10 faster than Gonzalo de Andres ahead of him. And as you say, with an 8-second gap now, 7.7 the gap. It's a tough one for Kevin to make up, but we'll see what happens. And yes, looking forward to Adalberto Baptista coming up through the field.
And there he is having a go at Paul Rogers on the inside line, the very experienced Adalberto Baptista. Rogers runs out wide, and the Brazilian football club owner, Adalberto Baptista, nips up the inside, goes 4th. And the podium definitely beckons, because that car, like we saw yesterday in Baptista's hands, has got really good pace.
Yes, he's very strong yesterday, and had a great battle with Danny Henry, and obviously got ahead eventually. A few moves there looked a little bit close call, but he eventually got through, and obviously had a solid podium yesterday. So again, yes, on his way to potentially another one.
The DTO car going through, which is Danny Henry then, as we look at Albert Jochems there coming towards us, and chasing on behind him is Adalberto Baptista, who absolutely is on a mission. There's the fight going between Rogers and Henry. That's 5th and 6th places. 7th in the background, Fiona James. Ron Trenker is 8th. But of course, then we've got these penalties to be applied. And Adalberto Baptista, even though we're talking about him charging, will cop 5 seconds there. Through goes Danny Henry, gets himself up past Paul Rogers. So what we have on the track at the end may not necessarily be the outcome because of time penalties. And there might even be more yet, depending on how the AMs go for the remaining 23 minutes.
Yes, the Baptista and Joachim fight, that'll be there in front of us already happening. But again, yes, there is the other penalty, I think, for the SMC car of 5 seconds. So we'll see if Joachim can hang on to it.
So Baptista then up into 3rd, and his last lap was a 1:41. Now, okay, there's traffic that he had to contend with on those last few laps. Now, if he can get away, we'll see what a clear lap time might be. But at the moment, it would appear that he's not going to match the pace of the top 2, unless, as I say, the traffic was slightly impeding him. He's had to do some overtaking. Now it's a clear road ahead. Jochem's down to 4th. Danny Henry is 5th, and his last lap was slightly quicker. There's the race leader, Gonzalo de Andres, then last year's champion. Back in 2020, he was the TCR Iberico Trophy champion, TCR Iberia, and he leads Kevin Madsen by 7.6 seconds. And bear in mind that we're talking here on the last lap, the difference being Madsen was 77 thousandths quicker. That's all. These are very evenly matched cars. The irony for Kevin Madsen, of course, is that if you take the 7 seconds of the pit stop out of the equation, they'd be pretty much tied together.
Yes.
Right now, though, he just can't get close enough. There is Danny Henry, who is getting quicker as the race goes on. Now, you touched on this yesterday, Tommy. Of course, now the car's much lighter on fuel, but as long as you've looked after your tyres, you can still deliver good lap times late in the race.
I mean, looking at the pros, the way they went about the beginning of the race, you'd think there'll be no tyres left at the end. But absolutely, this is a very, very light track on tyres, and now the cars are lighter fuel load. They should actually do some pretty quick lap times.
Over the timing line, then there goes Adalberto Baptista. So that was his first clear lap, and it was still only a 1:41. So he's kind of plateaued, you get the feeling now. Albert Jochems for 4th, and he's being caught, and you can see it, by Danny Henry, who is lapping quicker on a 1:41. So actually, Danny Henry on his last lap was quicker than Baptista. So if he gets on with the programme here, with 21 minutes to go, and he is getting on with the programme up the inside. That was bold and brave by Danny Henry. Jochems had to steer out of that, otherwise there would have been big contact. There was a little bit of a brush between the two, but really Albert Jochems was given no alternative. Get out of the way, said Danny Henry. I'm coming through.
I think we're going to get a replay on that one, I have a feeling, and it was, again, it looked like a bit forceful. I'll be honest with you, I was actually not looking at the screen when it actually happened. So here we go.
Danny Henry to the inside line, brakes as late as he dares. And yeah, Albert Jochems with a little bit of a nudge, had to get out of the way. Here it is from another angle. Have a look at Danny Henry. Good exit from turn 3. Charges up the inside, but he was really late there.
It looked a very late lunge, didn't he? I mean, he will argue that he had enough of this car alongside, because there's going to be a long discussion, I think, in the stewards' room later.
Well, it means certainly there's been a place change, and there, with a bit of damage on the side, is the car of Paul Rogers. He's behind that little group. There's Albert Jochems going through. So Jochems now almost in jeopardy for Paul Rogers, because that incident has delayed him. Fiona James hanging on in there in 7th place, as really wide goes Paul Rogers there coming out of turn 15. Up front, though, Gonzalo de Andres, 6.5 seconds clear. The gap came down last time by about 0.6 of a second. So Kevin Madsen is still pushing. He's not given up. And Adalberto Baptista 3rd, and Danny Henry 4th. Now, 1.9 seconds splits 3rd and 4th. Henry marginally quicker. We're talking hundredths of a second here with 19 minutes to go. So 3rd is not a done deal yet.
No, and of course, you've got the added penalty on Batista's car. So I think Henry really needs to keep pushing very hard, and so does Kevin, because again, he's consistently half a second faster than Gonzalo at the moment. So, and there's plenty of racing to go. Plenty of racing to go. So.
Absolutely right. That's Kevin Madsen then, who looked so strong yesterday. That's the lead car. Gonzalo de Andres then. We've done now 3/5 of the race, half an hour in the book. The last lap for Gonzalo de Andres was a 1:39.7. Kevin Madsen a 1:39.1 in the first sector of this lap. about a tenth quicker is Madsen in the second sector, about 2/10 quicker is Madsen. So little by little, he's building the pace, isn't he, so that that gap is coming down. Now, whether De Andres is genuinely unable to go any quicker, or whether he feels that if all of a sudden Madsen became a bit too close for comfort behind him, he can turn up the wick again, we'll have to wait and see. But right now, he's heading for the line, and Fiona James, I would suggest, is getting closer to Paul Rogers there. It's still showing Jaden Kelly on the timing screen, but it is Fiona James in the car, and the Speedworks entry edging ever closer to the back of Paul Rogers now. So this is the fight for 6th place.
Yes, Fiona just settled into her stride now. At the beginning, she lost a couple of positions, but she's now obviously focused and they've got someone to chase. So hopefully there'll be another battle on the screen for us soon.
The reason it's showing Jaden Kelly, I think, is because Fiona hasn't flicked the driver ID switch in the car, but it's most definitely Fiona behind the wheel, and she's chasing on behind Paul Rogers with that gap now 0.6 of a second. Fiona quicker last time through, so getting ever closer to Paul Rogers. Number 17, the car that retired from yesterday's race with that suspension issue, but Paul Rogers was 7th yesterday. He might get elbowed back there in a moment if Fiona James can find a way through. Ahead of the pair, Albert Jochems, hanging on to that 5th place, but he'll be a little bit knocked after the contact with Danny Henry. And, of course, that was the car that got turned around anyway in the hands of Charles Oldsman, so it's been a bit of a magnet for others.
Yeah, they've had a bit of a tough weekend, really. So number 42 car, but they're still running. They're still in the running of it, so hopefully they'll bring something out of it this weekend. But, yeah, so we've got how long left now?
Just under 17 minutes, I think.
17 minutes, so plenty of racing to go for him to catch up.
So Fiona James sitting on the back of Paul Rogers' car, and number 17, still thanks to Jaden Kelly in the first stint, has the fastest lap of the race, a 1:37.8. But Fiona is getting closer and closer and closer. Then she's got to work out where the best place to overtake is, because some corners you can do it if you're really, really brave. Ideally, she wants to try and force an error out of Paul Rogers. There, getting away up the road is Albert Jochems. Different lines taken into turn 14 there by the two, but Rogers stays ahead for the moment.
She's certainly putting the pressure on, and yeah, this will be an interesting one to watch. Coming into turn 1, turn 16, so she's coming out of turn 16. I'm sure she'll try and have a look at turn 1 potentially coming out of there.
There is, for Klaus Halsig, a steering issue, we understand, and that car has been retired into the pit lane. We saw it pit early with Brad Ellis at the wheel, and there are more track limit penalties coming with Danny Henry now with 15 seconds in total for track limits. Let's quickly go to the pit lane.
Jaden, of course, it's really frustrating. These things happen. Talk us through it.
Yeah, race was going well. Definitely good start, good pace at the beginning. And then just got a bit tough throughout. Braking was a bit of a struggle, and the car just let go into the last few corners, went around. Thank God I was able to recover it and keep driving. Bit of a heart attack, bit of a heart in your throat moment, but these things happen, unfortunately. It's racing, but it's okay.
But I mean, there's a lot to be positive about. The car clearly has pace, you clearly have pace, and Fiona's out there looking like she's about to get another place back. So there are some things to be happy about.
Of course. Fiona's doing a great job now, recovering a bit of what I've unraveled. But yeah, definitely all there. Just my team's done great. They've recovered the car from yesterday, of course, because we had to retire. So I'm very thankful to all of them. I'm thankful to be here. It's been really great, but just a little unfortunate then.
Oh, well, all is not lost. Best of luck for the rest of the race.
So that was Jaden Kelly reflecting on his spin. Just to go back to Danny Henry then, number 15. He's got so many penalties now. He's up to 15 seconds worth. He's had 9 track limit warnings. And even though he is running 4th on the road, then the penalties come. And that's before you take into account the incidents he had with Albert Jochems. Paul Rogers, in the meantime, still coming under pressure from Fiona James, but she hasn't quite worked out a way to wriggle by. The lead gap's down to 5 seconds, though, as you look at Kevin Madsen. So he's chipping away, but it's a hard gap to really break down.
It is, and time is running away from him here. He's not quite fast enough to close up the gap. But you know, another 13 minutes or so to go. It's still doable. We'll see. It needs to increase the pace a little bit more now.
Does indeed, as they're going through is then Kevin Madsen, but in the first sector he's fractionally quicker, in the second sector he's fractionally slower. So you get the feeling, don't you, that Gonzalo de Andres, I'm not saying he's playing with him, but he's fully aware of what the gap is. He's fully aware that as long as he wins by a tenth, he's still going to win. He doesn't have to push on and risk making a mistake. He can just measure that gap, and if he needs to push, because he's more experienced in the McLaren, then push he can, and he can stretch that margin again. 13 more minutes are on the clock. There's the live gap look. So the leader goes over the timing line. Second place car goes through 5.008 this time. So it's down a little bit more, but you know, only by hundredths of a second.
Yeah, again, the difference only of a tenth between the two laps on that one. So this is where I think Gonzalo, as you rightly said, he's probably managing that lead quite well with SMC team, very experienced. They'll be in touch with him, obviously, on the radio, telling him exactly what the gap is. So, and Gonzalo is a very experienced driver. I know he's the M in the lineup, but he's done an awful lot of racing, and yeah, he's definitely not going to give this one up.
Yes, he represented Spain in the FIA Motorsport Games back in 2019, the Vallelunga edition in the touring car class, so adept at touring car racing and GT racing. And there is Gonzalo de Andres then, heading up towards us at turn 9. Behind him is Kevin Madsen. Adalberto Baptista still third. He's not going to catch these two, and whether Danny Henry catches him or not kind of doesn't matter now, with 15 seconds worth of penalties to be applied to the DTO Motorsport car of solo driver Danny Henry. We've had the change for 6 though, because Fiona James, unseen, has got past Paul Rogers. It was in the post, but she's done it into the top 6. Now, if Fiona can stay within 15 seconds of Danny Henry, there's another place for the taking.
That would be a great story, wouldn't it, for them? They had such a difficult weekend up to now. Obviously, with Jaden leading the race, that looked really good, and they've dropped back, and now she's fighting back again. So it'll be a great story for them.
Well, indeed, right. So there are the top 2. Gonzalo de Andres was 5 seconds ahead last time. Kevin Madsen in second spot. Can we get this gap round about the high 4-second mark now? We'll see. Live gap started. Over the timing line they come, and it's down to 3.7. Wow. So a demon lap put in. Personal best lap by Kevin Madsen. I suppose if you can see that car ahead of you, it spurs you on even more. And now that what was a dot in the distance is becoming more of a McLaren rear end in the distance. So Kevin Madsen is having a real push.
There's nothing like being able to see the guy that you're fighting with. You know, that's going to absolutely push him to even harder. So, and now all of a sudden the gap, you know, looks doable. So it's 11 minutes to go. There's plenty of time there. If he just keeps putting those laps in, well, let's see if Gonzalo reacts. Let's see what lap time he comes up with next time.
So de Andres and Madsen, top 2, and half a second pull back in the first sector alone by Kevin Madsen. Almost as though he's flicked a switch in that car, and suddenly it's a lot more racy. There he is, up towards turn 9. So he's pushing all the time. Out of turn 10 in a moment, and they're heading towards the end of the second sector. 10.5 minutes on the clock then. We are getting a 5-second time penalty to Kevin Madsen for track limits. So there he is, charging. Maybe this is why he's charging, because he's been told you've got a penalty and make sure that you can overcome it. But Kevin Madsen, at the moment, the quickest man on the racetrack, but he's got a 5-second penalty for track limit abuses. Yet another one.
Well, that's kind of nailed it, I think, I'm afraid. But, you know, the difference in pace now with that 5 seconds added on top of it just isn't enough, I don't think, for him to make up. So Gonzalo, again, will be aware of that from the team through the radio. And, yeah, it's not looking great now for Speedwork. For the Optimum car.
That's right. They're going through then is the Optimum Motorsport entry. The car ahead from SMC Motorsport, Emilio de Villota Jr.'s team, a great Spanish motor racing family. And there is Gonzalo de Andres then, last year's joint champion with Tommy Pintos, of whom we got excited in stint 1. And Kevin Madsen has got the gap down to 2.5 seconds. But first of all, he's got to catch, then he's got to pass. And even if he does that, he's got to pull away by 5.001 seconds.
Well, if he does that, I don't think he'll come back here as an M, do you?
No, quite. So Kevin Madsen, like many, making his Misano debut. Joe Wheeler having lost time in that first stint and the longer pit stop, giving Kevin a bit of work to do, but he's risen to the occasion. And his last lap was a 38.9, so over a second of that quicker than Gonzalo de Andres right now. He's looking at that 5-second track limit penalty. And a couple of incidents involving Aston Miller, Albert and Charles Voltzmann, and the Albert Jochems Danny Henry one are going to be looked at after the race. That's information for everybody as much as for the driving standards advisor stood next to me. So I think that was a message to say to Tommy, we need you. Right, there's the race leading car. Gonzalo de Andres taking it over from Alejandro Gapet, but that gap is coming down and down and down, isn't it? Another half a second pullback in each of the sectors on this lap. So this is going to be round about the high 1 point somethings, isn't it? Just over a second and a bit of a gap, I would propose, as they come across the line this time. 24 laps in the book, and as the leaders go through, we are now down to 0.8 of a second, even more of a gain than expected. So, do you know what? This might yet be possible for Kevin Madsen.
Well, we'll see now what sort of defense really Gonzalo is going to put against Kevin, because obviously he doesn't want to risk, having contact and losing the race. But also he doesn't want to give it to him very, very easily, because obviously once he's ahead, he will pull a little bit of a gap. It's the question is, does he have enough time to pull 5 seconds?
Yeah, I mean, he could afford to let him go and just sit on his tail, but every driver wants to win properly, if you like. Take the checkered flag first, not just inherit it. And there's the answer to the defence, because Kevin Madsen lines up for a go on the inside line. Gonzalo de Andres gives him just enough racing room. Now Kevin Madsen then into the lead, and he's absolutely slashed that gap in the last 3 laps. There's traffic up the road as well. Gonzalo de Andres now just has to stay within 5 seconds of him, and there are 7 minutes on the clock. But the pace that Madsen has got, I think Gonzalo de Andres is going to have to up his game.
100%. He will have to up his game, because in 7 minutes he could pull 5 seconds. There's no doubt, judging by the pace that we've seen up to now. So it's time now for Gonzalo to up the pace and try and stay, with Kevin.
Through the traffic they turn. That is Ron Trenker's car, the Greystone GT entry being negotiated. Well, Gonzalo de Andres is staying with the race leader for now, but Kevin Madsen pushing, and if he gets away by 3 or 4 lengths and that breaks the spirit of Gonzalo de Andres, then the danger is that he settles into a slightly slower rhythm, and that helps Madsen build the gap. Over the line they go then. New race leader, number 4, Kevin Madsen ahead.
Gonzalo there out of turn 16 using track limits. So again, he is feeling the pressure. He needs to stay with Kevin, but be careful also that he doesn't do the track limits too much.
That's right. So Kevin Madsen with this 5-second penalty to overcome. And now we need to see what he can build it to with 6 minutes on the clock. There are more warnings going, and one of the warnings is to Gonzalo de Andres, who's up to 4 now, the man in second place. 6 is when the penalties start to come. So he's got to be careful. And the gap is widening, isn't it? Because 4 tenths were pulled out in sector 1. And if you keep building this over 3-4 more laps, then Kevin Madsen might be able to do it. He's certainly charging hard, that is for certain. Through the traffic, gets up past the Ryan James 570S. There is Ron Trenker. Makes his way up towards the end of the lap, the American driver in the Pro-Am Artura class. Right, the live gap then, now between the 2 leading cars, 1.6, so it's certainly going up, and there's time enough, I think, for Kevin Madsen to be able to do this.
Yeah, Gonzalo really needs to react a lot more. You can see the last laps there, quite a big difference there, over a second and a half, even between the 2 guys. So it's time now for Gonzalo to up his game, or he could lose this race.
Assuming he knows that the car ahead has a penalty. One assumes the team has told him that he's got to stay within 5 seconds. If he doesn't know and he just is demoralised and loses touch, then that would be a bitter blow. Over the line they come. Let's have a look at what it is here. 1.6 around the lap, 1.7 by the end of the lap. So just under 5 minutes to go and a flying lap, 1 minute 38. So De Andres really needs to treat this like a qualifying session to stay in touch with Kevin Madsen.
Yeah, it's another second loss there between the 2 of them, so it's going to be very tight. The Madsen not looking great for Gonzalo, you have to say.
A 10-second penalty to Fiona James for track limits. They'd already got 5, so now we are up to 15 seconds to the Speedworks car, I'm afraid. So again, what we have on the track is going to be a very different order from the final classification page because of all of these penalties, and one of them is hanging over the leading car. Kevin Madsen accelerates up towards turn 9. The other thing he's got to do in all of this, of course, is be so smooth. He can't afford to make a mistake and scrub off any of that time that he's built over Gonzalo de Andres. And you've got to say, he's building this gap very nicely.
Yeah, it's extending it every lap, isn't it? It's now obviously a question of time, and then will he be able to do that? The last lap again, a second between him. Sector 2 for Kevin's see another 6/10 just in sector 2, and it's gone up to 2.5 seconds. So
yeah, it's on this, I think, isn't it? With 2 more laps to go at the end of this one potentially. So Gonzalo Andres just unable, despite the fact he had a good gap early on, unable to do anything about Kevin Madsen. And to be fair, from 8 seconds back, Kevin has caught and passed and pulled away, but he's still got to keep on pushing. He's got to be 5 seconds and 1,000th clear over the line. It was 2.6 seconds around the lap. At the end of the lap, 2.9. 3 minutes and 13 seconds were on the clock when they got towards turn 1. So take 1 minute and 38 out of it, and we'll see what the balance is at the end of this lap, whether they can get 1 or 2 more in. From Madsen's point of view, he wants as many laps as he can get.
Yes, exactly. Extending the gap, the more the better. So, and Gonzalo is absolutely driving, the drive of his life really right now, trying to hang on to the win.
So that's the lead car, and you can see what the lap times have been like over the last 3 laps, with De Andres that little bit slower by 1.2 seconds, by a second and a half as well. So the SMC Motorsport car.
Yeah, another 4/10 gain there just in the first sector by Kevin,
who's done a personal best within the first sector. Yeah, the initial thought about De Andres kind of measuring that gap and just making sure that he was able to stay ahead, forget that. I think that car just is not quick enough, and he is now struggling to stay within 5 seconds of Kevin Madsen. He's not taking it easy. He's not just driving to the finish and being safe. He is struggling for pace relative to the on-the-road race leader.
Yes, well, it's anybody's call now. It's so tight with the mats at the moment.
Wow.
If you had to put money on it, I'd say that Kevin probably will just about pull the gap that he needs.
I think you're right. There's a 5th track limit warning for Gonzalo de Andres in 2nd place now. So 1 more and he will get a penalty. Now up towards the line comes the leading car and goes through. It's going to be touch and go this as to whether this is the last lap or not, because the last lap was a 1:38.5. And let's have a look at the last track limit offence from Gonzalo de Andres. There he is, all 4 wheels the wrong side of the white line. So it's going to be touch and go this as to whether it's the last lap, but the lead gap is 3.9 seconds. Madsen may well have done enough as he comes here out of turn 4.
I think this is the last lap, David. I don't think they'll quite have enough, but it will be tight. It's whether Gonzalo can pull something out of the bag to try and close up that gap a little bit.
So he has junked 0.4 of a second on that first sector. It was so marginal when they came across the line. Race controllers still looking at it to see whether there might be, a second's worth of grace to go on to the last lap. They've not confirmed it's the final lap yet, but the race is 50 minutes. So even if the flag weren't there, if it was 50 minutes and a second when they came across the line, that would give you the result. 4.2 seconds. So Kevin Madsen has nearly done it. Nearly. 1 more lap would put him in really good stead. 4.6 seconds now, and he's got another sector to build 0.4 of a second and a little bit more.
Well, that's real drama there at the end of the race. I mean, the 2 teams are absolutely, looking for the end of the race and see where they're going to end up. Who can tell?
So 11 seconds and counting. If he backed it off, it would be the last lap, but then he'd lose his 5-second cushion. He's heading up towards the line. There's the checkered flag, and 2 seconds, 1 second, time to perfection. Over the line goes Kevin Madsen then, and the margin in the end over Gonzalo de Andres is 4.9. He's missed out by 1/10 of a second. Can you believe it? So Gonzalo de Andres is going to inherit the win by 1/10 of a second. Kevin Madsen did not quite do enough.
Absolutely incredible finish. Yeah, who was going to bat and who, I don't know, but
wow.
Incredible way to finish the race.
I thought he'd done it. I thought 4.6, 1 more sector, he was going to have that. The race, oh dear, drama for Danny Henry. Now he's had a puncture. The smoke billowing out of the front, and there's damage to the car. Hard to gauge. Looks though the wheel might be at a jaunty angle. Kevin Madsen's race-winning time, 50 minutes, 0.429 of a second. So 50 minutes and 4/10. That was how time to perfection it was. But had it been another 1/10 of a second on that, he would have won the race. Wow. Gonzalo de Andres then does enough just to take the win, but that was pretty marginal.
Tell you, hats off to the Italian timekeepers there to actually time there to the second to put the checkered flag out. And Well, 4.9 seconds. I mean, that is an incredible way to finish the race. Well done, SMC and Gonzalo. Great performance there. And Kevin as well, again, just drove faultlessly throughout the weekend. Great performance by those two guys.
But for those track limit penalties, it could have been a different story, though. And in fairness to Kevin Madsen, to come from such a long way back to win and be nearly 5 seconds ahead at the end is quite something. Now, driver of the day, Jaden Kelly, would seem to be a very good shout, having taken the fastest lap of the race. And his car crossed the line 5th in the hands of Fiona James, but that's got 15 seconds of penalties to add as well. So we have an order over the line, but it'll be very different from what we have as the final result. So the car that was first over the line has a penalty. The car that was second doesn't. The car that was third does. The car that was fourth is okay. The car that was fifth is under investigation. The car that was sixth has 15 seconds of penalties. Have a look at the second placed car. That was all 4 wheels over the white line, Gonzalo de Andres. And we haven't had that as a track limit warning yet, but you might do.
But that would have been his 5th, wouldn't it? Not 6th?
That would have been his 6th. That would have been 6th.
Oh, really?
Which would have been a penalty, which would be added on at the end. Oh, dear me. Right, well, for the moment, the timing screen confirms number 11 as the winner, so the SRO officials switched the boards around. But if the system updates with more penalties and more track limit offences, then we might not be done yet. Anyway.
Looks like a busy evening for me, I think.
Well, the SMC team are very happy. Gonzalo de Andres then takes that win. And a good drive. So from the Arturas, de Andres and Gepet take their win from Madsen and Wheeler, and then Baptista and Pintos. And it was Ollie Webb and Ryan James that took honours in the 570 class. Helmet off, earpieces out, and Gonzalo de Andres could reflect on a win, but he did it the hard way, didn't he?
He looks remarkably, cool and collected there. I thought he would have been absolutely exhausted, putting all his efforts into that. But yeah, Gonzalo did a great job there, and Alejandro as well. So good win there for SMC.
Absolutely right. But yeah, considering how close he came to not winning that race, he looks remarkably laid back, like you say. So the Spanish team takes the win, and Gonzalo de Andres and his young co-driver Alejandro Gepet take honours by 0.99 of a second. And let's go and hear from our winners with Antonia.
Right, guys, all of you together, those track limits really threw a spanner in the works, didn't they? I mean, what was it, a 10th of the second in the end?
Yes, a 10th of a second. Yeah, incredible race, to be honest. It was really close. Here, Gonzalo, my teammate, did a great job. The start was also really difficult, really tricky with all the pros. But yeah, we did a good job. We kept it cool, and yeah, we won. So we're really happy.
Kevin, I'll come to you. You were pushing so hard there, but only just missed out. Must be infuriating.
Yeah, it's a team effort though. So like I did everything I could behind the wheel, and we'll have to take a look at it, because I don't really think I had maybe one track limit, but all good. We'll keep our heads high. We had a lot. Like I think we lost some time on the pit stop because some other cars behind us were released. Not just bad luck. And then coming out of pit lane, there was a car that just, man, he took a while to get up to speed. So I was kind of blocked, and I didn't want to cross over the line. So rather than get a penalty or have contact, which we saw, that's just not us. That's not optimum. I took the safe route, and unfortunately, I was a 10th of a second. But we should be very happy with second place. And again, we'll go back. This, first is all we're shooting for out here. We'll go back, and I'll tell you what, we'll come in stronger next time. But great job to the team and Joe and everybody else.
Of course, so many takeaways from this weekend. Thank you very much. Guys, what a brilliant way to end the first session of the season. You must be over the moon, even though it was very close.
Yes. It's a great effort by all the team. Really thankful to SMC Motorsport for the trust in me in this season, and also for Gonzalo for the great job he's done. And yeah, it's a great way to start the season. I think we will come up here leaders of the championship. So really happy, and now time to keep working for Spa, which is the next round.
Well, congratulations, guys. Go enjoy. yeah, other guys.
In the background, hordes of Renault Clios heading out onto the circuit, but there is the winning car. Then Gonzalo de Andres. I said Kevin Madsen had missed out by 1/10 of a second. Well, in truth, he missed out by 99 thousandths, which sounds worse, 1/10 or 99 thousandths. Anyway, it was very, very close. That's the point.
Hugely close, and that's how we like to see a race, and that close, you know. And Alejandro, of course, in the pits there, doing the maths already knows that they're leading the championship, obviously, with the result from yesterday. Yeah. So yeah, great effort for them. And again, a shout out there for Jaden Kelly, who is the driver of the day and thoroughly deserved electrifying performance from him at the beginning of the race. You know, such a young lad, and yeah, great to watch.
Now, somebody like him coming from this kind of championship, and Alejandro Gapet, another young gun that really ought to be attracting the attention of GT team bosses, because if they're looking at this and thinking, wow, there's Jaden Kelly, new to the circuit, new to car racing, new to this discipline, and doing that kind of pace, we need to keep an eye on him.
Absolutely. There's no doubt they are watching it. This is, you know, they know that these cars are phenomenally quick. You know, they require a lot of skill, and you know, if you're winning and doing well in these cars, then there's someone that you want to be watching on.
Sure. Well, the drivers are getting themselves ready for the podium here at the Misano World Circuit, the circuit Marco Simoncelli. And as you've just been hearing, the next stop for McLaren Trophy Europe will be at the end of June, the CrowdStrike 24 Hours of Spa. Very different circuit. Last year, because of the bad weather on race day morning, Saturday morning, the McLaren Trophy race was cancelled, so they only got one race in. So although, again, this gives you 4 free practice sessions and testing and qualifying, many of the drivers will go there still with limited track knowledge. Gonzalo de Andres and Alejandro Gapet then win from Kevin Madsen and Joe Wheeler, and then third, Adalberto Baptista and Tommy Pintos. Fourth, Albert Jochems and Charles Voltzmann. Paul Rogers and Aston Miller, fifth from Fiona James and Jaden Kelly. Danny Henry didn't get to the end, but had done more distance than Ryan James and Ollie Webb and Ron Trenker and Duncan Tappy, with Klaus Halsig's steering issue putting him out of the race. So there is Gonzalo de Andres. Still intrigued to know whether he realises just how close he came to not winning that race, but he seems to be so languid and serene about it all. Seems churlish to mention it.
He's definitely the most laid-back driver in the paddock. Every time you see him, he's just like, he's just strolling around. Yeah. Nothing worries him. He's never looking nervous or, you know, yeah, always a really cool character. And he looked very cool coming out of the car there, considering the amount of pressure he was under.
Absolutely right. Absolutely. So drivers then now getting their overalls togged up, ready to go. And there, Adalberto Baptista and his co-driver Thomas Pintos, who are third then in the Artura part of the race. They step forward, up onto the podium. Then for second place, they will be Kevin Madsen and Joe Wheeler, the winners yesterday. They step forward then, a win and a second, not a bad weekend. And but for 99 thousandths of a second, which is less than a blink, really, they would have had another win. And then the top step of the podium goes to 2 more SMC Motorsport drivers, the fresh-faced Alejandro Gapet, and behind him, Gonzalo de Andres, celebrating with his co-driver of last year, the joint champion of last year, Thomas Pintos. The SMC Motorsport team taking honours here at Misano, and Ryan James and Ollie Webb as the 570S class winners on the podium as well.
I'm sure Ollie and Ryan had different overalls yesterday.
Possibly right.
I think they've got new overalls for today. That's great.
Could be right. There's the driver of the day, Jaden Kelly, a race that promised much, but he got the fastest lap as the SMC Motorsport team celebrates its win. So for the Spanish SMC Motorsports team, Emilio de Villota Jr.'s team, the national anthem plays, and then Dariusz Gashari from McLaren will step forward with the trophies. They're quite funky, the overalls of Ollie Webb and Ryan James, aren't they? With,
yes.
Whatever it is that's meant to sort of be dribbling down the sides.
Brand new overalls, very nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ollie Webb, all smiles. Perfect driver coach for Ryan James, helping him learn about lines, racing, discipline, And at the other end of the podium, Jaden Kelly, driver of the day, fastest lap in only his second ever car race, and a fine effort put in as well. And then the trophy is to the top three. So for third place, Adalberto Baptista gets the trophy. Tommy Pintos, who collected quite a lot of silverware last year. And for Spa, a bigger grid is promised, and 2 more excellent races we can look forward to there as well. There, the second place trophy for Kevin Madsen, for Joe Wheeler, whose father, late father, Peter, was of course the man behind the TVR company for so many years, brought the wonderful Tuscan Championship into existence. But here, for the top step, for the winners' trophies, look no further than Gonzalo de Andres and Alejandro Gapet. They come out on top by 99 thousandths of a second in a fascinating race with lots of overtaking, with penalties to factor in, and a bit of strategy as well. Kevin Madsen and Joe Wheeler get a soaking. The SMC Motorsport drivers celebrate a 1-3 for the Spanish team. Let's look at the highlights then of race 2 of the weekend in McLaren Trophy Europe that began with Joe Wheeler getting off the line effectively, but it wasn't long before Jaden Kelly was on the attack. He had a look as they wriggled their way through turns 1, 2 and 3. He couldn't do it there, but Kelly certainly had good pace and he had plenty of intent as well. It was a brave pass round the outside with Tommy Pintos following suit. That elbowed Joe Wheeler back into third, and he lost a little bit more ground in the opening stint of the race. Kelly then was soon under attack from Pintos, who dived through on the inside at turn 8. The SMC Motorsport car looking really strong early in the race. But Kelly fought back and had a great dive on the inside at turn 16 to go ahead, but in so doing ran wide and exceeded the track limits, and eventually they were enough to give a 5-second penalty. Joe Wheeler rattled his way past number 11 in the hands of Alejandro Gapet, and then up front Kelly had a big lose coming out of turn 13. All the way around it went. He recovered, he slotted into 4th place and pitted at the end of the window to relay Fiona James, but it was a slow stop by the Speedworks team, and what that ultimately gave us was in the lead of the race, Gonzalo de Andres being chased by Kevin Madsen, but Madsen in turn picked up enough track limit warnings to cop a 5-second penalty. He was able to get the lead on the track. Then the question was whether or not he could build a further 5 seconds. Well, he very nearly did it, because 4.901 was the gap at the very end, but in the end it was a race win for number 11 of Gonzalo de Andres and Alejandro Gapet at the end of another enthralling McLaren Trophy Europe race. We'll see you next time at Spa.